The dying millionaire searched for his son to pour out his heart, but his son still. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the cavernous halls of the Blackwell mansion. Jonathan Blackwell, once a titan of industry, now lay crumpled on the polished marble floor, his trembling hand still clutching a crystal tumbler. The amber liquid from his unfinished drink spread slowly across the cold surface, mirroring the growing realization in Jonathan's eyes. Something was terribly wrong. "Sir, Mr. Blackwell." The panicked voice of his longtime butler, Harrison, seemed distant as Jonathan's vision blurred. He tried to speak to reassure the old man that he was fine, but his words came out as an unintelligible mumble. As darkness crept into the edges of his consciousness, Jonathan's thoughts turned to the one person he longed to see, his estranged son, Michael. Years of regret and unspoken words weighed heavily on his heart as he slipped into unconsciousness. Hours later, Jonathan awoke in the sterile confines of a private hospital room. The steady beep of monitors and the antiseptic smell assaulted his senses. A grey-faced doctor stood at the foot of his bed, clipboard in hand. "Mr. Blackwell, I'm afraid I have some difficult news," the doctor began, his voice heavy with the weight of his words. "Tests reveal an aggressive form of cancer. It's quite advanced." Jonathan listened in stunned silence as the doctor explained his prognosis. Words like terminal and limited time pierced through the fog of his disbelief. 6 months, maybe a year if he was lucky. The irony wasn't lost on him. A man who had built an empire, who could buy anything he desired, now faced with the one thing his wealth couldn't change. As the doctor continued to speak, outlining treatment options and palliative care, Jonathan's mind wandered. He thought of his vast fortune, his numerous achievements, and the accolades that had defined his life. Yet in this moment they all seemed hollow, meaningless. There was only one thing that mattered now, one regret that overshadowed all others, the rift between him and his son. Michael, who had walked out of his life years ago, whose whereabouts remained a mystery. The son he had failed, the relationship he had neglected in pursuit of his ambitions. In that sterile hospital room, surrounded by the trappings of his wealth and the grim reality of his mortality, Jonathan Blackwell made a decision. He would use whatever time he had left to find Michael, to make amends, to bridge the chasm that had grown between them. As he lay there, a plan began to form in his mind. He would spare no expense, leave no stone unturned. Whatever it took, he would find his son and make things right. The clock was ticking, and Jonathan Blackwell was about to embark on the most important journey of his life, a race against time to reclaim the love he had lost. Jonathan Blackwell's life had been a testament to the American dream. Born to working-class parents in a small Midwest town, he had clawed his way to the top through sheer determination and an uncanny ability to spot opportunities where others saw only obstacles. His journey from a scrappy young entrepreneur to the billionaire CEO of Blackwell Industries was the stuff of legend in business circles. At 68, Jonathan cut an imposing figure. His silver hair, always impeccably styled, and piercing blue eyes gave an air of authority that few could match. He had built his empire on technological innovations, transforming Blackwell Industries from a small startup into a global conglomerate that shaped the very fabric of modern society. "You know, there was a time when I thought success was measured by the number of zeros in your bank account," Jonathan mused to his assistant one day, his voice tinged with regret. "If only I had realized sooner that true wealth lies in the connections we nurture." Jonathan's rise to prominence had come at a cost, one he was only now beginning to fully comprehend. His single-minded focus on work had left little room for personal relationships. His marriage had crumbled under the weight of his ambitions, ending in a bitter divorce that had dominated tabloid headlines for months. But it was his relationship with his son, Michael, that haunted Jonathan the most. Michael, now 35, had once looked up to his father with adoration. Jonathan could still remember the pride in his son's eyes when he'd bring him to the office, showing him the empire he was building. "Dad, one day I want to be just like you," a young Michael had exclaimed, his eyes wide with wonder as he spun in Jonathan's leather office chair. Those memories now felt like relics from another life. As Michael grew older, the admiration in his eyes had been replaced by resentment and disappointment. The long hours, missed birthdays, and broken promises had taken their toll. The final straw came on the night of Michael's high school graduation. Jonathan had promised to be there, swearing on everything he held dear that nothing would keep him away. But as the ceremony began, Michael's eyes scanned the crowd in vain. His father's seat remained empty. What Michael didn't know was that Jonathan had been caught in a crisis at work. A major deal was falling apart, threatening to undo years of hard work. In that moment, faced with the choice between his son's milestone and saving his company, Jonathan had chosen the latter. It was a decision that would haunt him for years to come. When he finally made it home that night, he found Michael waiting for him, graduation gown still on, eyes red from a mixture of tears and anger. "I'm done, Dad," Michael had said, his voice eerily calm. "I'm done waiting for you to realize that there's more to life than your damn company. I'm done being an afterthought in your grand plans." Before Jonathan could respond, Michael had walked out the door. It would be the last time Jonathan saw his son. In the years that followed, Jonathan had tried to reach out, sending letters, emails, and even attempting to track Michael down through private investigators. But his son had vanished, cutting all ties with his former life. As news of Jonathan's success continued to make headlines, he couldn't help but wonder about the life Michael had chosen. Had he found happiness? Had he pursued his dreams? The questions gnawed at Jonathan, a constant reminder of his greatest failure. And if you're out there watching this, Jonathan once said during a rare television interview, his voice choking with emotion, "I want you to know that I'm sorry, Michael. I was wrong, and I'd give everything I've built to have a chance to make things right." The irony wasn't lost on Jonathan that he, a man known for his strategic brilliance, had failed so spectacularly in the most important aspect of his life. He had conquered markets, outmaneuvered competitors, and amassed a fortune beyond his wildest dreams. Yet he couldn't bridge the gap with his own son. As the years passed, Jonathan threw himself even deeper into his work, as if building an ever larger empire could fill the void left by Michael's absence. The Blackwell Industries expanded into new territories, its influence reaching into every corner of the globe. Jonathan's name became synonymous with innovation and success. But behind closed doors, in the quiet moments when the phone stopped ringing and the emails ceased, Jonathan was haunted by the ghosts of his past. The vast emptiness of his mansion echoed with the absence of family and love. "You know, he once confided to Harrison, his loyal butler and perhaps the closest thing he had to a friend, all of this means nothing if you have no one to share it with. If I could go back and change one thing, I'd tell that young, ambitious Jonathan to never lose sight of what truly matters." Harrison, who had witnessed the toll of Jonathan's choices over the years, simply nodded, understanding the weight of his employer's words. As Jonathan's health began to fail, the realization that he might never get the chance to make amends with Michael became unbearable. The empire he had built, once a source of immense pride, now felt like a gilded cage, trapping him in a life of meaningless achievement. "To anyone out there who's watching," Jonathan said in what would be his final public appearance, his voice strong despite his failing health, "Don't make the same mistakes I did. Success is empty if you sacrifice the people you love to achieve it. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt the sting of regret or the desire for reconciliation, I urge you to take action. Share this message, subscribe to channels that promote family values and personal growth. Together we can create a world where success is measured not just in dollars, but in the strength of our relationships." Little did Jonathan know that somewhere, in a small apartment thousands of miles away, a young man with familiar blue eyes was watching that very broadcast, his hand hovering over the subscribe button as tears streamed down his face. The diagnosis hit Jonathan like a freight train, shattering the illusion of invincibility he had built around himself. As he sat in his opulent study, the weight of his mortality pressed down on him, making even the simple act of breathing feel laborious. 6 months to a year, he murmured, the doctor's words echoing in his mind. The ticking of the antique grandfather clock in the corner seemed to grow louder, a constant reminder of the precious time slipping away. Jonathan's gaze fell on a dusty photograph on his desk, one he hadn't looked at in years. It showed a younger version of himself with Michael, both smiling widely at a baseball game. The memory of that day, so vivid and yet so distant, sparked a fire within him. "Harrison," he called out, his voice stronger than it had been in days. The loyal butler appeared almost instantly. "Yes, Mr. Blackwell?" "I need you to gather every piece of information we have on Michael's last known whereabouts. Every lead, no matter how small, and get me the best private investigators money can buy." Harrison nodded, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "Right away, sir. Shall I also inform the board of your condition?" Jonathan waved dismissively. "The company can wait. This is more important." Over the next few weeks, Jonathan threw himself into the search with the same fervor he had once reserved for business deals. Private investigators scoured the country, following leads that always seemed to go cold. Each dead end felt like a personal failure, another reminder of how far Michael had gone to distance himself from his father's world. As the traditional methods failed to yield results, Jonathan realized he needed to think outside the box. He decided to leverage his considerable influence in a more public way. "When I want to make an announcement," he told his PR team, "a public appeal for information on Michael's whereabouts." His team looked at him in shock. Jonathan Blackwell, the man who guarded his privacy fiercely, was willing to lay bare his personal struggles for the world to see. The press conference was unlike anything the business world had seen. Jonathan stood before a sea of cameras, his usual commanding presence softened by vulnerability. "I come before you not as the CEO of Blackwell Industries, but as a father," he began, his voice wavering slightly. "I've made many mistakes in my life, but none greater than losing touch with my son, Michael. I'm asking for your help to find him, to give me a chance to make amends before it's too late." The appeal went viral, spreading across social media platforms and news outlets. "Find Michael Blackwell" trended for days, with people sharing stories of their own family reconciliations and offering support. But as weeks turned into months, and the leads continued to dry up, Jonathan's hope began to fade. His health deteriorated rapidly, the stress of the search taking its toll on his already weakened body. It was during one particularly dark night, as Jonathan sat alone in his study, that he made a decision that would change everything. "Harrison," he called out, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, Mr. Blackwell?" "I want you to make arrangements. I'm leaving the mansion." Harrison's eyes widened in surprise. "Leaving, sir? To where?" Jonathan's gaze was determined as he replied, "To find Michael myself. If these are to be my last months, I won't spend them waiting behind these walls. I'll search every street, every town if I have to." "But sir, your health." "My health be damned," Jonathan interrupted. "I've let fear and comfort keep me from doing what's right for too long. It's time I remember who I was before all this wealth, before I lost sight of what truly matters." As Harrison left to make the arrangements, Jonathan turned to look out the window at the sprawling estate grounds. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose that had nothing to do with business or money. "I'm coming, Michael," he whispered to the night. "Wherever you are, whatever it takes, I'll find you. And this time I won't let you down." Little did Jonathan know that his journey would take him far from the world of luxury he knew into a landscape of hardship and humility he could never have imagined. As he prepared to leave behind the trappings of his wealth, he was embarking on a path that would not only lead him to Michael, but also to a profound rediscovery of himself. The coming days would test Jonathan in ways he had never been tested before. But as he stood on the precipice of this new chapter, he felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration. For the first time in decades, Jonathan Blackwell was stepping into the unknown, driven by the most powerful force he had ever known, the love of a father for his son. The dawn broke over the Blackwell estate, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. Jonathan stood at the gates, a small suitcase in hand, looking back at the mansion that had been his home for decades. The enormity of what he was about to do weighed heavily on him, but the thought of Michael steeled his resolve. "Are you certain about this, sir?" Harrison asked, concern etched on his weathered face. Jonathan nodded, his jaw set with determination. "More certain than I've been about anything in years, Harrison. It's time I remember who I was before all this." With a deep breath, Jonathan stepped out onto the street, the gates closing behind him with a final clang. He had traded his tailored suits for simple jeans and a worn leather jacket, items he hadn't worn in years. His platinum credit cards and designer watch were left behind, replaced by a modest amount of cash and a cheap prepaid phone. As he walked away from his old life, Jonathan couldn't help but feel a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. For the first time in decades, he was stepping into the unknown, driven by something more powerful than the pursuit of wealth or success, the love of a father for his son. His first stop was the bus station, a place he had never set foot in before. The hustle and bustle of everyday people going about their lives was both foreign and fascinating to him. As he queued for a ticket, he overheard snippets of conversation, people discussing their financial struggles, their hopes, their fears. It was a world away from the boardrooms and luxury he was accustomed to. "Where to?" the tired-looking ticket clerk asked. Jonathan hesitated. He had a vague idea that Michael had headed west after their falling out, but no specific destination. "Los Angeles," he said finally, picking a city that seemed as good a starting point as any. The long bus journey was an eye-opening experience for Jonathan. He found himself seated next to a young woman juggling a fussy baby and a toddler. In his old life he might have been annoyed by the noise. Now he found himself offering to hold the baby, giving the exhausted mother a much-needed break. "Thank you," she said, gratitude shining in her tired eyes. "It's not easy doing this alone." As they talked, Jonathan learned about her life, a single mother working 2 jobs to make ends meet, dreaming of a better future for her children. Her resilience and hope in the face of adversity touched something deep within him. "You know," he said, surprising himself with his openness, "I'm on a journey to find my son. We lost touch years ago. I'm hoping it's not too late to make things right." The woman smiled, a knowing look in her eyes. "It's never too late to show someone you love them. Your son is lucky to have a father who cares enough to search for him." Her words stayed with Jonathan long after they parted ways at a bus stop in Arizona. As he continued his journey, he found himself more open to the stories of those around him. The retired veteran searching for purpose, the college student burdened by debt but full of dreams, the immigrant family building a new life from scratch. And each interaction chipped away at the walls Jonathan had built around himself over the years. He began to see the world through new eyes, understanding the struggles and triumphs of ordinary people in a way he never had before. As the bus rolled into Los Angeles, Jonathan felt both exhilarated and overwhelmed. The sprawling city seemed to stretch endlessly before him, teeming with millions of lives. How would he ever find Michael in this vast urban landscape? He started with the basics: cheap motels, soup kitchens, community centers. Everywhere he went, he showed Michael's photo, hoping for a glimmer of recognition in someone's eyes. But day after day he met with disappointment. The search took its toll on Jonathan. The long days of walking, the nights in dingy motel rooms, and the constant worry about his dwindling funds wore him down. His health, already fragile, began to deteriorate further. There were moments when the pain was almost unbearable, when he was tempted to give up and return to the comfort of his old life. But every time he considered quitting, he would remember Michael's face, the hurt in his eyes the last time they had spoken. It drove him to push on, to keep searching even when it seemed hopeless. One particularly difficult evening, as Jonathan sat on a park bench, exhausted and disheartened, he struck up a conversation with an elderly homeless man named Frank. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world, friend," Frank observed, his voice kind despite its roughness. Jonathan found himself pouring out his story to this stranger, his rise to wealth, his neglect of his family, his desperate search for redemption. Frank listened without judgment, nodding in understanding. "You know," Frank said when Jonathan had finished, "I was like you once. Had it all, family, career, the works. Lost it all chasing the wrong things. But let me tell you something I learned the hard way. It's never too late to change your story." Those words struck a chord deep within Jonathan. He realized that this journey wasn't just about finding Michael, it was about rediscovering himself, about becoming the man and the father he should have been all along. With renewed determination, Jonathan pressed on. He expanded his search, volunteering at shelters and community outreach programs, hoping to catch a glimpse of Michael while also giving back to the communities he once viewed from the lofty heights of his corporate tower. As weeks turned into months, Jonathan's appearance changed dramatically. His designer stubble grew into a full beard, streaked with grey. His hands, once soft from a life of luxury, became calloused and worn. But his eyes, once cold and calculating, now held a warmth and empathy born from shared struggles and human connections. One day, while helping serve meals at a downtown shelter, Jonathan overheard a conversation that made his heart race. "Yeah, there's this new guy at the youth center on 7th. Been doing amazing work with the kids there. I think his name's Mike or Michael or something." Jonathan's hand shook as he approached the speaker. "Excuse me," he said, his voice trembling. "This youth center, could you tell me more about it?" As the man described the location, Jonathan felt a surge of hope unlike anything he had experienced in months. Could this finally be the lead he had been waiting for? As he set out for the youth center the next morning, Jonathan felt a mix of anticipation and fear. What if it wasn't Michael? Or worse, what if it was, and Michael wanted nothing to do with him? Standing outside the nondescript building, Jonathan took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. He had come too far to turn back now. With a silent prayer, he pushed open the door, ready to face whatever fate had in store for him. Little did he know that beyond the threshold lay not just the possibility of reuniting with his son, but the ultimate test of his newfound understanding of life, love, and the true meaning of wealth. As Jonathan pushed open the door of the youth center, his heart pounding in his chest, he was immediately engulfed by the vibrant energy of the place. Children's laughter echoed through the hallways, mixed with the sound of basketballs bouncing and the strumming of guitars. For a moment he stood frozen, overwhelmed by the atmosphere so different from the corporate world he had left behind. A young volunteer approached him, her smile warm and welcoming. "Can I help you, sir?" Jonathan cleared his throat, suddenly aware of how out of place he must look. "I'm looking for someone. A Michael Blackwell. I heard he might work here." The volunteer's eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh, Mike! Yeah, he's been a godsend around here. He's always going above and beyond for the kids. He should be in the art room right now. Down the hall, second door on the left." With trembling legs, Jonathan made his way down the corridor. Each step felt like a journey through time, memories flooding back with every breath. As he approached the art room, a familiar voice drifted out, causing him to pause mid-step. It was deeper than he remembered, but unmistakably Michael's. Jonathan peered through the doorway, his breath catching in his throat. There, surrounded by a group of children, stood Michael. His son had grown into a man, his features sharper, more defined, but his eyes still held that same spark of enthusiasm Jonathan remembered from years ago. Michael was guiding a young girl's hand as she painted, his patience and gentleness evident in every movement. For a moment, Jonathan was transported back in time to a sunny afternoon in their old backyard. Dad, look what I made. A 10-year-old Michael came running across the lawn, a painting clutched in his hands, paint smeared across his cheeks. Jonathan, distracted by a business call, held up a hand to silence his son. "Not now, Michael. This call is important." The excitement in Michael's eyes dimmed, but he waited patiently for his father to finish. When Jonathan finally hung up, he turned to his son with an exasperated sigh. "All right, what is it?" Michael held up his painting proudly. It was a colorful rendition of their family, Jonathan, Michael, and his mother, standing in front of their house. "It's us, Dad. Miss Johnson said it was the best in the class." Jonathan glanced at the painting briefly. "That's nice, son. Why don't you go show your mother? I've got some work to finish up." As he turned back to his laptop, he missed the way Michael's shoulders slumped, the light in his eyes fading as he trudged back to the house. The memory hit Jonathan like a physical blow. How many moments like that had he missed? How many times had he brushed aside his son's accomplishments, too focused on his own pursuits to notice the growing distance between them? He was pulled from his reverie by Michael's voice, closer now. "All right, everyone, great job today. Remember, art is about expressing yourself, not about being perfect. I want to see all of you back here next week with more amazing creations." The children began to file out of the room, chattering excitedly. Jonathan pressed himself against the wall, suddenly unsure. What right did he have to barge into Michael's life now, after all these years? As the last child left, Jonathan heard Michael moving around the room, presumably cleaning up. But it was now or never. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the doorway. Michael's back was to him, arranging paintbrushes in a jar. Jonathan's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. "Michael?" He saw his son stiffen, the paintbrush in his hand clattering to the floor. Slowly, Michael turned, his eyes widening in disbelief as they landed on Jonathan. For a long moment, neither spoke. The air between them was thick with unspoken words, years of hurt and regret hanging in the balance. Finally, Michael broke the silence, his voice a mix of shock and wariness. "Dad? What are you doing here?" Jonathan took a tentative step forward, his hands shaking at his sides. "I've been looking for you, son. For months now. I needed to see you, to talk to you." Michael's expression hardened, a wall coming down behind his eyes. "Talk. After all these years you want to talk now?" The bitterness in Michael's voice was like a knife to Jonathan's heart, but he pressed on. "I know I have no right to ask for your time, Michael. But please, just give me a chance to explain, to apologize." Michael looked at him for a long moment, conflict clear on his face. Finally he sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Jonathan's chest ache. "Fine, but not here. There's a cafe down the street. We can talk there." As they walked to the cafe in tense silence, Jonathan's mind raced. He had imagined this moment so many times over the past months, rehearsed what he would say. But now, faced with the reality of his son's presence, all his carefully prepared words seemed inadequate. They sat at a small table in the corner of the cafe, 2 steaming mugs of coffee between them. Michael stared at him expectantly, his posture guarded. Jonathan took a deep breath, deciding that honesty was the only path forward. "I've made so many mistakes, Michael. More than I can count. But losing you, letting you walk out of my life, that's the one I regret the most." Michael's jaw tightened, but he remained silent, allowing Jonathan to continue. "I thought I was building an empire for us, creating a legacy that would secure your future. But in doing so, I lost sight of what truly mattered. I missed your games, your graduations, the moments that can never be recaptured. I was so focused on giving you everything that I failed to give you the one thing you truly needed, a father who was present, who cared." Jonathan's voice cracked, emotions he had held at bay for so long finally breaking through. "I'm dying, Michael. The doctors gave me 6 months to a year, and faced with my own mortality, I realized that all the wealth, all the success, it means nothing if I can't make things right with you." Michael's eyes widened at this revelation, a flicker of concern breaking through his stoic facade. "You're dying? Is that why you're here? Some sort of deathbed reconciliation?" Jonathan shook his head vehemently. "No, son. I'm here because I love you, because I want to know you, the man you've become. I'm here because even if you can never forgive me, I need you to know how proud I am of you, how sorry I am for every moment I missed, every hurt I caused." As Jonathan spoke, he saw the conflict in Michael's eyes, the battle between years of pent-up anger and the undeniable pull of family ties. It reminded him of another time years ago when he had seen that same conflict. 17-year-old Michael stood in Jonathan's study, fists clenched at his sides, eyes blazing with a mix of hurt and defiance. "You promised, Dad. You promised you'd be there." Jonathan barely looked up from his computer screen, his voice distracted. "Something came up, Michael. It was unavoidable. You know how important this merger is. More important than my graduation." Michael's voice cracked, betraying the depth of his pain. "It was supposed to be different this time. You swore you'd make it." Finally, Jonathan looked at his son, irritation creeping into his tone. "Don't be dramatic, Michael. It's just a high school graduation. There will be other milestones." Michael stared at him in disbelief. "Just a high school graduation? Do you even hear yourself?" "This was important to me, Dad, but I guess I should be used to disappointment by now, right?" As Michael turned to leave, Jonathan felt a flicker of regret. He stood, reaching out. "Michael, wait." But Michael was already gone, the door slamming behind him with a finality that echoed through the house. Back in the present, Jonathan blinked away the memory, focusing on the man his son had become. "I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, Michael, but I'm asking for a chance. A chance to know you, to be a part of your life in whatever way you'll allow." Michael was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his coffee mug. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, controlled. "Do you have any idea what it was like, Dad? Growing up with a father who was always too busy, too important to be bothered with his son's trivial life?" Jonathan's heart clenched, but he knew he needed to hear this, to truly understand the depth of the hurt he had caused. Michael continued, his words gaining momentum. "I used to make excuses for you, you know. Tell my friends that my dad was out there, changing the world. That's why he couldn't make it to my games or my school plays. But as I got older, I realized the truth. You just didn't care enough to try." "That's not true, Michael," Jonathan interjected, his voice pained. "I cared. I've always cared. I lost sight of what was truly important. I thought providing for you, securing your future, was the most important thing I could do as a father. I was wrong, so terribly wrong." Michael's eyes met his, a lifetime of hurt reflected in their depths. "Do you know why I'm here, Dad? Why I work at that youth center?" Jonathan shook his head, listening intently. "Because I know what it's like to feel invisible, to feel like you don't matter. These kids, many of them have parents who are physically absent. Mine was there, but unreachable, hidden behind boardroom doors and business trips. I swore I'd never let another child feel the way I did growing up." The weight of Michael's words hit Jonathan like a physical blow. He had always prided himself on being a provider, on giving Michael every material advantage. But in doing so, he had failed to give him the one thing he truly needed, a father's love and attention. "I'm so sorry, Michael," Jonathan whispered, tears threatening to spill over. "I know those words aren't enough, that they can't erase years of neglect. But I want you to know that not a day has gone by that I haven't regretted the choices I made, the distance I allowed to grow between us." Michael's expression softened slightly, the first crack in his armor. "Why now, Dad? Why after all these years?" Jonathan took a deep breath, deciding to lay all his cards on the table. "When I received my diagnosis, it was like a wake-up call. Suddenly, all the things I thought were important, the company, the wealth, the recognition, they all seemed so meaningless. The only thing that mattered was you, the relationship I had squandered." He leaned forward, his eyes earnest. "I left it all behind, Michael. The company, the mansion, all of it. So I've been searching for you for months, living on the streets in shelters. I needed to find you, to tell you how sorry I am, how much I love you. Even if you can never forgive me, I needed you to know that." Michael's eyes widened in surprise. "You left everything, but the company, it was your life's work." Jonathan shook his head, a sad smile on his face. "No, Michael, you were my life's work. I just failed to realize it until it was almost too late." As they sat there, the weight of years of misunderstanding and hurt between them, Jonathan realized how much he had changed over the course of his journey. The man who had set out from that mansion months ago, driven by desperation and regret, was not the same man sitting here now. His journey across the country, following Michael's trail, had opened his eyes to a world he had never truly seen before. He had slept in homeless shelters, shared meals with strangers who had nothing yet gave everything. He had witnessed acts of kindness that put his own self-centered life to shame. In a rundown shelter in Chicago, he had met Maria, a single mother working 3 jobs to put her daughter through college. Her determination and sacrifice had humbled him, making him question every priority he had ever held. In a small town in Nebraska, he had worked alongside Jack, a veteran who had lost everything to addiction but was rebuilding his life one day at a time. Jack's resilience in the face of adversity had taught Jonathan the true meaning of strength. And in countless cities and towns along the way, he had seen the impact of his own company's ruthless business practices. Through the communities devastated by factory closures, the families struggling to make ends meet in the wake of corporate downsizing. It was a harsh reality check, one that had forced him to confront the true cost of his success. Each experience, each person he met, had chipped away at the armor of indifference and self-importance he had built around himself over the years. He had learned to listen, truly listen, to the stories of those around him. He had discovered a capacity for empathy he never knew he possessed. Most importantly, he had learned the value of human connection, of being present in the moment. The very things he had denied Michael throughout his childhood. As he looked at his son now, he saw not just the hurt and anger of the past, but the possibility of a future where he could be the father he should have been all along. "I know I can't change the past, Michael," Jonathan said softly. "But if you'll let me, I'd like to be a part of your future, in whatever way you're comfortable with. I want to know you, to understand the man you've become, and maybe in the time I have left I can show you the father I should have been all along." Michael was quiet for a long moment, processing everything he had heard. When he finally spoke, his voice was cautious but not unkind. "I can't promise anything, Dad. There's a lot of hurt, a lot of years to overcome. But I'm willing to try, to take it one day at a time." Jonathan felt a surge of hope, more powerful than anything he had experienced in years. "That's all I ask for, son. A chance. Thank you." As they sat there, the first tentative steps towards reconciliation taken, Jonathan realized that his journey was far from over. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt like he was on the right path. The path to becoming the man and the father he was always meant to be. Michael's life at the homeless shelter had been a journey of self-discovery and purpose. After walking away from his father's world of wealth and privilege, he had struggled to find his footing. The first few months had been a harsh awakening, bouncing between friends' couches and cheap motels, his savings dwindling rapidly. It was a rainy night when Michael found himself at the doors of the Harmony House shelter. Soaked to the bone and at his lowest point, he was greeted by Sarah, a kind-faced volunteer who offered him not just a warm meal and a dry bed, but also a chance to rebuild his life. "Everyone here has a story," Sarah had told him that first night. "What matters is what you choose to do with yours." Those words had struck a chord deep within Michael. Over the following weeks, he threw himself into volunteer work at the shelter, finding solace in helping others who were struggling. It was during a late-night conversation with Tom, a grizzled veteran who had become something of a mentor to Michael, that he had his epiphany. "You've got a gift, kid," Tom had said, watching Michael counsel a young runaway. "Way you connect with these folks, especially the young ones. You ought to do something with that." That conversation had set Michael on his path. He enrolled in night classes, studying social work while continuing to volunteer at the shelter. It wasn't easy. There were nights when the weight of his estrangement from his father, the life he had left behind, threatened to overwhelm him. But each morning he would wake up with renewed determination, driven by the knowledge that he was making a real difference in people's lives. As Michael immersed himself in his new life, he grappled with intense internal conflicts. And there were moments when he missed the comfort and security of his old life, when the struggle of making ends meet seemed overwhelming. He would find himself staring at his phone, his father's number pulled up, finger hovering over the call button. But then the memories would flood back, the missed birthdays, the broken promises, the constant feeling of being an afterthought as Grace grandfather's grand plans, and he would put the phone away, his resolve strengthened. Or yet, as the years passed and Michael grew into his role as a youth counselor, he found himself thinking of his father more often. He would catch glimpses of Jonathan on TV or in newspapers, the mogul's face a little more lined each time, and feel a pang of something. Not quite regret, but a sense of unfinished business, of words left unsaid. There were nights when Michael would lie awake, replaying their last conversation in his mind. Had he been too harsh, too quick to walk away? But then he would remember the look of indifference on his father's face when he had missed yet another important event, and the hurt would resurface raw and fresh. It was Sarah who finally confronted him about it one day. "You know, Michael," she said gently, "forgiveness isn't about excusing what was done to you. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of anger." Her words had haunted Michael for weeks, forcing him to confront the complex tangle of emotions he harbored towards his father. He began to realize that his work at the shelter, his dedication to being there for kids who felt unseen and unheard, was as much about healing his own wounds as it was about helping others. As Michael wrestled with these internal conflicts, Jonathan's search for his son was a roller coaster of hope and despair. Each lead, no matter how tenuous, would send Jonathan's heart racing with anticipation, only to be crushed when it proved false. There was the heart-stopping moment in Seattle when Jonathan thought he spotted Michael across a crowded street. He had chased after the figure, pushing through the throng of people, only to find himself face to face with a stranger who bore only a passing resemblance to his son. In Boston, a well-meaning shelter volunteer had sworn she recognized Michael from Jonathan's photo. For 3 days, Jonathan had haunted the shelter, hope building with each hour, only to discover that the volunteer had confused Michael with another young man who had left the shelter months ago. The cruelest near miss came in Chicago. Jonathan had received a tip about a youth center where someone matching Michael's description worked. He had rushed there, his heart pounding, rehearsing what he would say when he finally came face to face with his son. But as he approached the center, he saw police cars and an ambulance, lights flashing. A shooting had occurred just hours before, and the center was closed indefinitely. The lead, if it had ever been genuine, had evaporated like mist in the morning sun. Each false lead, each near miss, took its toll on Jonathan. There were days when the weight of his quest seemed too much to bear, when the ache in his bones and the fatigue in his soul threatened to overwhelm him. But each time he considered giving up, he would remember Michael's face, the hurt in his eyes the last time they had spoken, and he would find the strength to continue. It was during one such low point, sitting on a park bench in St. Louis, that Jonathan had an encounter that would renew his determination. An elderly woman, noticing his dejected posture, had sat down beside him. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world, young man," she said, her voice kind. Jonathan had laughed bitterly. "Young? I haven't felt young in years." The woman smiled. "We're all young in the eyes of the universe. Now, want to tell an old lady what's troubling you?" Perhaps it was her gentle demeanor, Or perhaps it was simply the need to unburden himself. But Jonathan found himself pouring out his story, his neglect of Michael, their estrangement, his desperate search for redemption. The woman listened without judgment, her eyes filled with compassion. When Jonathan finished, she placed a weathered hand on his arm. "You know," she said softly, "my father and I were estranged for many years. I was so angry, so hurt by his actions, that I couldn't see past my own pain. It wasn't until he was gone that I realized all the chances for reconciliation I had missed." Her words struck Jonathan like a physical blow. "What did you do?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman's smile was tinged with sadness. "I learned to forgive him, and in doing so I forgave myself for all the years we lost. It's never too late for love, young man, never too late to heal old wounds." As she stood to leave, she patted Jonathan's shoulder. "Keep searching. Your son is out there, and he needs you as much as you need him, even if he doesn't know it yet." Those words had reignited the fire in Jonathan's heart. He had set out the next day with renewed vigor, determined to follow every lead, no matter how small, until he found Michael. And now, sitting across from his son in that small cafe, Jonathan realized that every false lead, every near miss had led him to this moment. The journey had stripped away his arrogance, his self-importance, leaving behind a man who was finally ready to be the father Michael deserved. As they tentatively began to bridge the chasm between them, Jonathan silently thanked every person who had helped him along the way, every setback that had taught him humility, every false lead that had tested his resolve. For it was through these trials that he had found not just his son, but also his own humanity. The tentative peace that had settled over Jonathan and Michael as they left the cafe was shattered the moment they stepped onto the busy street. A passing car backfired, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the urban canyon. Jonathan, his nerves frayed from months of street living, instinctively flinched, stumbling into Michael. For a brief moment, Michael's arm shot out to steady his father, a reflex born of years of caring for others. But as quickly as it had come, the moment passed and Michael withdrew, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. "You okay?" he asked, his voice gruff but tinged with concern. Jonathan straightened, embarrassed by his reaction. "Yes, thank you. I'm just not used to the noise anymore, I suppose." An awkward silence fell between them, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavily in the air. Finally, Michael cleared his throat. "Look, Dad, I appreciate you coming all this way, but I need some time to process all of this. It's a lot to take in." Jonathan nodded, trying to hide the disappointment that threatened to overwhelm him. "Of course I understand. Could we meet again? Maybe in a few days?" Michael hesitated, his internal struggle visible on his face. "I don't know, Dad. I need to think about this, about what it means, what I want." As Jonathan opened his mouth to respond, a voice called out from down the street. "Mike, hey Mike." They both turned to see a young woman jogging towards them, her face bright with a smile that faltered as she took in the tension between them. "Oh, I'm sorry," she said, glancing between Michael and Jonathan. "I didn't mean to interrupt." Michael's posture relaxed slightly as he turned to the newcomer. "It's okay, Lily. This is my father, Jonathan. Dad, this is Lily. She works with me at the youth center." Lily's eyes widened in recognition, darting between Michael and Jonathan. "Your father? You said." And Michael cut her off with a sharp look. "It's complicated, Lily." Jonathan, sensing the undercurrents of the conversation, stepped forward, extending his hand to Lily. "It's nice to meet you, Lily. I'm glad Michael has good people working alongside him." Lily shook his hand, her grip firm despite her obvious confusion. "It's nice to meet you too, Mr. Blackwell. He's incredible with the kids. We're lucky to have him." Pride swelled in Jonathan's chest at her words, tempered by the bitter knowledge that he had played no part in shaping the man his son had become. Michael, clearly uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation, turned to Lily. Was there something you needed? Lily blinked, as if remembering why she had called out in the first place. Oh, right. There's an emergency at the center. Tommy's back and he's pretty worked up. We could really use your help. The change in Michael was immediate. His posture straightened, his eyes sharpening with focus. Is he violent? Lily shook her head. Not yet, but he's agitated. You know how he gets. You're the only one he really listens to. Michael nodded, already moving towards the youth center. He paused, glancing back at Jonathan. I have to go. This is important. Jonathan stepped forward, his heart racing. Let me come with you. Maybe I can help. Michael's eyes narrowed, a flash of the old anger resurfacing. Help? Dad, you don't know anything about these kids, about what they're going through. This isn't some corporate crisis you can throw money at to fix. The word stung, but Jonathan pressed on. I know I don't understand, Michael, but I want to learn. Please, let me see the work you do. Let me understand this part of your life. For a long moment, Michael stared at him, the internal debate clear on his face. Finally, he sighed. Fine, but you stay back and let me handle this. These kids are fragile, and they don't need some stranger butting in. Understood? Jonathan nodded, relief flooding through him. It wasn't much, but it was a start. As they hurried towards the youth center, Jonathan's mind raced. He had imagined many scenarios for reconnecting with Michael, but this was beyond anything he had envisioned. He was about to step into his son's world, a world so far removed from the life of privilege he had once provided. The youth center was a hive of nervous energy when they arrived, a cluster of teenagers huddled in one corner, whispering urgently amongst themselves. 2 adult volunteers stood outside a closed door, their faces etched with concern. Michael strode in, his presence immediately commanding attention. Where is he? He asked, his voice calm but authoritative. One of the volunteers gestured to the closed door. In the art room, he's got himself barricaded in there. Keeps yelling that he won't go back, that we can't make him. Michael nodded, his expression grim. Okay, I'm going in. Dad, stay here with Lily. And remember what I said. Let me handle this. As Michael approached the door, Jonathan felt a surge of fear. Michael, wait. Is it safe? Should we call the police? Michael turned, his eyes hard. The police are the last thing Tommy needs right now. Trust me, Dad. This is what I do. With that, Michael knocked gently on the door. Tommy, it's Mike. Can we talk, buddy? There was a moment of silence, then a young voice, cracking with emotion, called out, Go away. I ain't going back, you can't make me. Michael leaned against the door, his voice soft but firm. Nobody's making you do anything, Tommy. I just want to talk. Remember our deal. You and me, we always talk things out, right? Another pause, longer this time. Then, the sound of furniture scraping across the floor. The door opened a crack, revealing a tear-stained face of a boy no more than 15. You promise? Tommy asked, his voice small and vulnerable. You promise you won't let them take me back? Michael's face softened, his voice gentle. I promise, Tommy. Now, can I come in? Just you and me, okay? Tommy nodded, opening the door wider to let Michael in. As the door closed behind them, Jonathan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. Lily came to stand beside him, her eyes fixed on the closed door. Mike's amazing with them, she said softly. Especially the tough cases like Tommy. It's like he has a sixth sense for what they need. Jonathan nodded, his chest tight with a mixture of pride and regret. He always was perceptive, even as a child. I never appreciated it then. Lily glanced at him, curiosity evident in her eyes. Can I ask you something, Mr. Blackwell? Why now? Mike's been here for years doing this work. Why are you showing up in his life now? The question, direct and unvarnished, caught Jonathan off guard. He considered deflecting, giving some sanitized version of the truth. But something in Lily's open, honest face made him reconsider. "I'm dying," he said simply. "Cancer, and facing my own mortality made me realize how badly I'd failed as a father. I've spent the last few months searching for Michael, trying to make amends before it's too late." Lily's eyes widened, a mix of sympathy and skepticism crossing her face. "Does Mike know? About the cancer, I mean." Jonathan nodded. "I told him earlier today. It's a lot for him to process, I know." Lily was quiet for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. "You know," she said finally, "Mike doesn't talk much about his past, about his family. But when he does, there's always this pain in his eyes, a hurt that goes bone deep." Her words were like a knife to Jonathan's heart, but he forced himself to listen. He owed it to Michael to face the consequences of his actions. "These kids," Lily continued, gesturing around the center, "most of them come from homes where they were ignored, neglected, or worse. Mike connects with them in a way the rest of us can't. It's like he understands their pain from the inside out." Jonathan closed his eyes, the full weight of his failures crashing down on him. "I did that to him," he whispered. "I made him feel unseen, unimportant." Lily's hand on his arm startled him. He opened his eyes to find her looking at him with unexpected compassion. "Maybe," she said softly, "but you're here now. You're trying. That has to count for something." Before Jonathan could respond, the door to the art room opened. Michael emerged, his arm around Tommy's shoulders. The boy's face was tear-streaked but calmer, his body language relaxed as he leaned into Michael's side. "Everything okay?" Lily asked, moving towards them. Michael nodded, his eyes never leaving Tommy. "Yeah, we're good. Tommy's going to stay here tonight, in the safe room. Tomorrow we'll talk to his caseworker about finding a better placement. Right, buddy?" Tommy nodded, his voice small but determined. "Yeah," Mike says. "Mike says I don't have to go back to that place. He says we'll find somewhere better." "That's right," Michael affirmed, giving the boy's shoulder a squeeze. "We've got your back, Tommy. Always." As Lily led Tommy away, Michael turned to Jonathan, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "That's what we do here, Dad. We show these kids that they matter, that someone cares. Something I wish." He trailed off, but the unspoken words hung heavily between them. "Something I wish you had done for me." Jonathan stepped forward, his heart aching. "Michael, what you did there, it was incredible. The way you connected with that boy, the trust he has in you. I'm so proud of you, son." Michael's eyes met his, a storm of emotions swirling in their depths. For a moment Jonathan thought he saw a flicker of the little boy who used to look at him with adoration. But then Michael's expression hardened, the walls slamming back into place. "You don't get to be proud, Dad. You weren't there. You didn't shape this part of me. I became this person in spite of you, not because of you." The words hit Jonathan like a physical blow, but he forced himself to stand tall. "You're right," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I wasn't there. I failed you in every way a father can fail his child. But Michael, I'm here now. I want to understand, to learn. Please give me that chance." Michael stared at him for a long moment, the internal struggle clear on his face. Finally he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know if I can, Dad. I don't know if I have it in me to open that door again. The hurt, it goes too deep." Jonathan felt his heart breaking, but he refused to give up. Not now, not when he was so close. "I understand, Michael. I do. But please, just let me stay for a while. Let me see the work you do here. No pressure, no expectations. Just a chance to know the man you've become." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. Jonathan held his breath, fear and hope warring in his chest. Finally Michael spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "For 1 week," he said. "You can stay for 1 week. Volunteer at the center, see what we do here. After that, we'll talk again." Relief flooded through Jonathan, so intense it made him dizzy. "Thank you, Michael. Thank you. I promise I won't let you down. Not again." Michael's eyes met his, a mix of wariness and something else, something that might have been hope, in their depths. "Don't make promises, Dad. Just be here. That's all I'm asking." As Michael turned to walk away, Jonathan called out, unable to stop himself. I love you, son. I know I haven't shown it, haven't said it nearly enough, but I do. I love you." So Michael paused, his back to Jonathan. For a moment he stood perfectly still, and Jonathan feared he had pushed too far, too fast. But then Michael's shoulders slumped slightly, and he spoke without turning around. "I know, Dad. I love you too. I just don't know if that's enough anymore." With that he walked away, leaving Jonathan standing alone in the center. The words hung in the air, a bittersweet mixture of hope and heartache. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start, a fragile, tentative beginning. As Jonathan watched his son disappear down the hallway, he made a silent vow. He would spend every moment of this week, every second of whatever time he had left, proving to Michael that love could be enough, that it wasn't too late to heal the wounds of the past and build something new. The road ahead would be difficult, fraught with painful conversations and old hurts resurfacing. But for the first time in years, Jonathan felt a glimmer of hope. He had found his son, had been granted a chance to make amends, and he was determined not to waste it. With a deep breath, Jonathan squared his shoulders and walked further into the youth center. He had a week to learn, to understand, to prove himself worthy of his son's forgiveness, and he was going to make every moment count. The week flew by in a whirlwind of activity, each day bringing new challenges and revelations for Jonathan. He threw himself into the work at the youth center with the same intensity he had once reserved for business deals, determined to understand Michael's world. As Jonathan mopped the floors one evening, long after the kids had gone, he found himself reflecting on the stark contrast between his current surroundings and the luxurious offices he once inhabited. "You know," he mused aloud, his voice echoing in the empty hallway, "I used to think success was measured in profit margins and stock prices. But here, success is measured in smiles, in small victories, in lives changed. It's a different kind of wealth, isn't it?" His words seemed to hang in the air, a quiet invitation for those listening to reassess their own definitions of success. The days were long and the work was hard, but Jonathan found himself energized in a way he hadn't felt in years. He helped serve meals, tutored kids struggling with homework, and even learned to navigate the complex world of social services paperwork. One afternoon, as he struggled to help a young girl with her math homework, Jonathan felt a presence behind him. He turned to find Michael watching, an unreadable expression on his face. "You're doing it wrong," Michael said, his voice neutral. "Here, let me show you." As Michael patiently explained the concept to the girl, Jonathan watched in awe. The gentleness in his son's voice, the way he broke down complex ideas into simple terms, was a side of Michael he had never seen before. When the girl left, beaming with newfound understanding, Jonathan turned to Michael. "You're amazing with them," he said softly. I wish I had taken the time to see this side of you when you were growing up." Michael's eyes met his, a flicker of something, pain, longing, passing through them. "Yeah, well, better late than never, I guess." The words were hardly forgiveness, but they weren't rejection either. It was a small crack in the wall between them, and Jonathan was determined to widen it. As the week progressed, Jonathan's health began to deteriorate. The long hours and physical work took their toll, and he found himself struggling to keep up. He tried to hide it, not wanting to burden Michael or the others, but his son's perceptive eyes missed nothing. One evening, as Jonathan sat slumped in a chair, trying to catch his breath after a particularly busy day, Michael approached him, concern etched on his face. "You're pushing yourself too hard," Michael said, his voice gruff but tinged with worry. "You need to rest." Jonathan shook his head, forcing himself to sit up straighter. "I'm fine, Michael. There's still so much to do, so much to learn." And Michael's expression softened slightly. "Dad, you don't have to prove anything. We all see how hard you're working." Those words, so simple yet so profound, brought tears to Jonathan's eyes. "I have everything to prove, Michael. To you, to these kids, to myself. I spent so many years focused on the wrong things. I can't waste a single moment now." As he spoke, Jonathan's gaze drifted to the viewers, as if sharing this moment of vulnerability with them. "Life is short," he said softly, "and we don't always get second chances. If you're watching this, and there's someone you need to make amends with, don't wait. Every moment is precious." Michael stood silent for a long moment, conflict clear on his face. Finally, he sighed. "Come on, I'll drive you back to your hotel. You need to rest." The drive was quiet, the air heavy with unspoken words. As they pulled up to the modest hotel where Jonathan was staying, Michael broke the silence. "Why didn't you tell me how bad it was getting? The cancer, I mean." Jonathan turned to his son, surprised by the question. I didn't want to burden you. You've already been through so much because of me." Michael's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Damn it, Dad. You can't just show up after all these years, drop a bomb like that, and then act like it's nothing. I have a right to know." The pain in Michael's voice was palpable, and Jonathan felt his heart constrict. "You're right, I'm sorry, I guess I'm still learning how to be a father even now." Michael's eyes met his, a storm of emotions swirling in their depths. "Yeah, well, I'm still learning how to be a son. Especially to a father I thought I'd lost years ago." With honesty in those words, the raw vulnerability hit Jonathan hard. He reached out, hesitating for a moment before placing his hand on Michael's arm. "We'll learn together then if you'll let us." For a breathless moment, Jonathan thought Michael might pull away, but then his son nodded, just once, a barely perceptible movement. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't reconciliation, but it was a start. As Jonathan got out of the car, he turned back to the viewers, his voice low and intense. "You don't make the same mistakes I did. Don't let pride or fear keep you from the people you love. Reach out, make that call, have that difficult conversation. You never know how much time you have left." The next few days saw a subtle shift in Jonathan and Michael's interactions. The silences between them were less tense, the conversations a little easier. They were far from healed, but they were talking, really talking, for the first time in years. One evening, as they worked together to clean up after a particularly chaotic art session, Michael suddenly spoke up. "Do you remember that summer when I was 10, when we went camping in the Rockies?" Jonathan paused, a memory surfacing of sparkling lakes and starry skies. "Of course. You were so excited about roasting marshmallows you nearly set the whole campsite on fire." A ghost of a smile flickered across Michael's face. "Yeah, and you didn't even mad. You just laughed and showed me how to do it properly. It's one of the few times I remember you being present, just there in the moment with me." The wistfulness in Michael's voice was like a knife to Jonathan's heart. "I wish there had been more moments like that, Michael. I wish I had understood then what I know now, that those moments were the most important ones." Michael nodded, his eyes distant. "Me too, Dad, me too." As they lapsed back into silence, Jonathan turned to the camera, his voice soft but urgent. "To everyone watching, cherish those small moments. The camping trips, the bedtime stories, the simple act of being present. Those are the threads that weave the fabric of a relationship. Don't let them slip away." The week was drawing to a close, and Jonathan could feel the weight of unresolved issues pressing down on them. He knew they needed to talk, really talk, about the years of hurt and misunderstanding that lay between them. On the final evening, as they sat in Michael's small office after everyone else had gone home, Jonathan took a deep breath. "Michael, I know this week doesn't erase the past. I know I have years of mistakes to answer for. But I want you to know how proud I am of you, of the man you've become. And I'm so sorry for every moment I made you feel less than the incredible person you are." Michael was quiet for a long moment, his eyes fixed on the floor. When he finally looked up, there were tears glistening in his eyes. "You hurt me, Dad. For years I felt like I was never good enough, never important enough to warrant your attention. And now you're here and you're dying, and I don't know how to reconcile all these feelings inside me." Jonathan felt his own eyes fill with tears. "I know, son. and I would give anything to go back and change it all. But I can't. All I can do is be here now and hope that it's not too late for us to build something new." As father and son sat there, the weight of years of pain and regret hanging between them, Jonathan turned to the viewers one last time. His voice was choked with emotion, but his words were clear and heartfelt. "If you're watching this and you've been holding on to hurt or resentment, I urge you to let it go. Life is too short, too precious to waste on anger. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past, it's about choosing to build a better future. It's never too late to heal, to reconnect, to love. Don't wait until it's too late to make things right." As the sun set outside, casting long shadows across the office, Jonathan and Michael began the long, difficult, but ultimately healing conversation they had both been avoiding for years. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of pain and anger, but there were also moments of laughter, of shared memories, of rediscovered connection. And as they talked, really talked, for the first time in years, both father and son felt the first tentative threads of a new relationship beginning to form. It wasn't perfect, and there was still a long road ahead, but it was a start, a chance to build something new from the ashes of the past. In that small office, surrounded by the evidence of Michael's life's work, Jonathan finally understood the true meaning of legacy. It wasn't about wealth or corporate empires. It was about the lives we touch, the love we share, and the connections we forge. And he silently vowed to spend whatever time he had left nurturing the most important connection of all, the one with his son. As the sun rose on what was supposed to be Jonathan's last day at the youth center, an unexpected commotion erupted outside. Jonathan and Michael, who had been sharing a quiet moment over coffee, rushed to the entrance to find a crowd gathering. At the center of the throng stood a well-dressed woman in her late 50s, a perfectly coiffed hair and designer suit a stark contrast to the usual visitors of the center. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, scanned the crowd until they landed on Jonathan. A flicker of recognition passed between them. "Jonathan Blackwell," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly hushed crowd. "I should have known I'd find you here." But Michael tensed beside his father. "Dad, who is this?" Before Jonathan could respond, the woman strode forward, extending her hand. "Victoria Hartley, CEO of Hartley Enterprises. Your father and I go way back, don't we, Jonathan?" Jonathan shook her hand warily. "Victoria, this is unexpected. What brings you here?" Victoria's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, I think you know why I'm here, Jonathan. Your little sabbatical has caused quite a stir in the business world. The board is in an uproar, shareholders are panicking, and here you are, playing social worker." The gaze swept dismissively over the youth center before landing on Michael. "And this must be the prodigal son. Michael, isn't it? Your father's been searching for you for months. It seems he's finally found his redemption project." Michael bristled at her tone, but Jonathan placed a calming hand on his arm. "Michael is my son, Victoria, not a project. And my reasons for being here are personal. The business can wait." Victoria's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Oh, Jonathan, always the idealist. Don't you see? Your little journey of self-discovery is putting everything we've built at risk. The merger with global tech is hanging by a thread. They're threatening to pull out if you don't return immediately." Jonathan felt the weight of every eye on him, the silence heavy with expectation. He could feel Michael tense beside him, could almost hear the thoughts racing through his son's mind. Was this it? Would his father abandon him again for the siren call of the business world? For a moment, Jonathan was transported back to his old life. He could almost feel the smooth leather of his executive chair, could hear the hum of activity in the boardroom. The pull of that world, the power and prestige he had worked so hard to achieve, was strong. But then he looked at Michael, saw the mixture of fear and resignation in his son's eyes, and knew what he had to do. "I'm sorry, Victoria," he said, his voice firm, "but I'm not coming back. The company will have to manage without me." Victoria's eyes widened in disbelief. "You can't be serious." Jonathan, this is your life's work we're talking about. Everything you've built, everything you've sacrificed for, you're just going to throw it all away. Jonathan shook his head, a sad smile playing on his lips. No, Victoria, I'm not throwing anything away. I'm finally understanding what truly matters. My son, these kids, this community, this is what's important. Not mergers or stock prices. He turned to address the gathered crowd, his voice carrying with the same authority that had once commanded boardrooms. I spent years believing that success was measured in dollars and cents. I thought I was building a legacy, something that would outlast me, but I was wrong. Jonathan's gaze swept over the faces around him, the kids from the center, the volunteers, Michael. This, he said, gesturing to the youth center, this is a real legacy. Changing lives, offering hope, building connections, that's what truly lasts. Victoria scoffed, her composure slipping. And what about your shareholders, Jonathan? What about the thousands of employees who depend on Blackwell Industries? Are you just going to abandon them? Jonathan paused, considering her words. He knew she had a point. His actions did affect more than just himself. But then an idea struck him, a way to bridge his old world with his new understanding. You're right, Victoria. I do have a responsibility to the company and its employees, which is why I'm going to donate the majority of my shares to a trust. This trust will ensure that a significant portion of the company's profits go directly to funding youth centers and community programs across the country. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Victoria looked as if she'd been slapped. You can't do that, she sputtered. The board will never agree. Jonathan's smile was serene. The board doesn't have to agree, Victoria. It's my personal stake in the company and I can do with it as I please. And I choose to use it to make a real difference in people's lives. He turned to Michael, whose eyes were wide with shock. That is, if you'll help me, son. I could use your expertise in setting this up, in making sure the money goes where it's truly needed. Michael stared at his father, a whirlwind of emotions playing across his face. For a moment, Jonathan feared he had overstepped, had assumed too much too soon. But then Michael nodded, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Yeah, Dad, he said softly. I think I could help with that. The tension in the air dissipated, replaced by a buzz of excitement. The kids from the center began to chatter, their voices filled with hope and possibility. Victoria, seeing she had lost this battle, turned on her heel and strode away, her phone already at her ear as she barked orders to her team. As the crowd began to disperse, Jonathan felt a wave of dizziness wash over him. The excitement and stress of the confrontation had taken its toll on his weakened body. He swayed, reaching out to steady himself against the wall. Michael was at his side in an instant, concern etched on his face. Dad, are you okay? Jonathan nodded, trying to catch his breath. I'm fine, just a little tired. But even as he spoke, he could feel his strength ebbing away. The world began to tilt, voices becoming distant and muffled. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was Michael's face, fear and love mingling in his son's eyes. When Jonathan regained consciousness, he found himself in a hospital bed, the steady beep of monitors filling the air. Michael sat beside him, his hand gripping Jonathan's tightly. Hey, Michael said softly, relief evident in his voice. You gave us quite a scare there, Dad. Jonathan tried to speak, but his throat was dry. Michael quickly offered him some water, supporting his head as he drank. How long was I out? Jonathan asked, his voice hoarse. 2 days, Michael replied. The doctors say the cancer's progressing faster than they expected. Dad, why didn't you tell me it was this bad? Jonathan could see the hurt in his son's eyes, the fear of abandonment warring with concern. He squeezed Michael's hand weakly. I'm sorry, son. I didn't want to burden you. I thought I had more time. Michael's laugh was watery, tinged with both humor and sadness. You Blackwell men and your stubbornness. I guess that's where I get it from, huh? For a moment they sat in comfortable silence, the beeping of the monitors a reminder of the precious time slipping away. Then Michael spoke again, his voice soft but determined. "I've been thinking about what you said about the trust and the youth centers. I want to do it, Dad. I want to help make it happen." Jonathan felt a surge of joy so intense it almost overwhelmed the pain. "Really? You're sure?" Michael nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Yeah, I'm sure. It's a good idea, Dad. A way to make real change, to help kids like the ones at our center. And it's a way for us to work together, to build something meaningful." Tears welled up in Jonathan's eyes. "I'd like that, son. I'd like that very much." As they began to discuss the details, making plans and sharing ideas, Jonathan felt a sense of peace wash over him. He had spent so much of his life chasing the wrong kind of legacy, but here, in this hospital room with his son, he was finally building something that would truly last. The road ahead would not be easy. There were still hurts to heal, trust to rebuild, and Jonathan's time was limited, the cancer an ever-present shadow. But in that moment none of that mattered. Father and son were connected, united in a common purpose, their bond stronger than it had ever been. As Jonathan drifted off to sleep, exhausted but content, he knew that whatever time he had left would be well spent. He had found his son had been given a second chance to be the father he should have been all along. And together they would create a legacy of love, compassion, and hope, a legacy that would touch lives long after Jonathan was gone. In the quiet of the hospital room, as Michael watched over his sleeping father, the first rays of dawn broke through the window. It was a new day full of possibilities and promise, and for the first time in years both father and son looked toward the future with hope in their hearts and love in their eyes. The weeks that followed Jonathan's collapse were a whirlwind of activity. Despite his weakening condition, he threw himself into the work of setting up the trust with a vigor that surprised even his doctors. Michael remained by his side, their relationship deepening as they worked together towards a common goal. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves drifted past the hospital window, Jonathan and Michael sat poring over the final draft of the trust documents. The room was filled with a comfortable silence, broken only by the occasional rustle of papers and the steady beep of medical monitors. "And I think this is it, Dad," Michael said, looking up from the documents with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "Once we sign these, it's official. Blackwell Industries will be funding youth centers and community programs across the country." Jonathan nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. "It's more than I ever dreamed possible, Michael, and it's all thanks to you. Your insight, your experience, you've made this so much more than I could have on my own." So Michael's eyes misted over, and he quickly looked away, pretending to study the papers. "I just hope it makes a difference," he said softly. "It will," Jonathan assured him, reaching out to squeeze his son's hand. "Because of you, countless kids will have the support and opportunities they need. You're changing lives, Michael. Never doubt that." As they signed the documents, a weight seemed to lift from Jonathan's shoulders. He leaned back against his pillows, suddenly exhausted but deeply content. "You know," he mused, "I spent so many years chasing the wrong kind of legacy. I thought I was building something that would last, but it was all just smoke and mirrors." Michael looked at his father, concern etched on his face. "Dad!" Jonathan smiled, his eyes distant. "But this, what we've created together, this is real. This will outlast us both, touching lives for generations to come. I couldn't ask for a better legacy than that." As the days passed, Jonathan's condition continued to deteriorate. The cancer was aggressive, spreading faster than the doctors had anticipated. But even as his body weakened, his spirit seemed to grow stronger. He spent hours talking with Michael, sharing stories from his past, listening with rapt attention as his son spoke about his work at the youth center. One evening, as the sun was setting, casting a warm glow across the hospital room, Jonathan turned to Michael with a serious expression. "Son, there's something I need to tell you." Michael leaned forward, concern evident in his eyes. "What is it, Dad?" Jonathan took a deep breath, steeling himself. "I've made arrangements for after. I know we haven't talked much about it, but I want you to know that everything's taken care of. The company, the trust, my personal affairs, it's all sorted. Michael nodded, his throat tight. Okay, Dad. Thank you for thinking of that. There's more, Jonathan continued, his voice soft but firm. I've left everything to you, Michael. The house, my personal assets, it's all yours. Michael's eyes widened in surprise. Dad, I don't know what to say. I don't need. Jonathan held up a hand, silencing him. I know you don't need it, son. That's one of the things I admire most about you. But I want you to have it. Use it, don't use it, that's up to you. But know that it's there if you need it. Tears welled up in Michael's eyes and he gripped his father's hand tightly. Thank you, Dad. I love you. Jonathan smiled, his own eyes glistening. I love you too, son, more than you'll ever know. As the days turned into weeks, Jonathan's condition continued to decline. But even as his body failed him, his spirit remained strong. And he received a steady stream of visitors, old business associates, employees from Blackwell Industries, even some of the kids from the youth center. Each visit seemed to energize him, giving him a renewed sense of purpose. One particularly memorable afternoon, Tommy, the troubled teen from the youth center, came to visit. He shuffled into the room, hands shoved deep in his pockets, eyes darting nervously around. Hey, Mr. Blackwell, he mumbled, not quite meeting Jonathan's eyes. Mike said I could come see you. Jonathan smiled warmly, gesturing for Tommy to come closer. I'm glad you did, Tommy. How are things at the center? Tommy shrugged, but there was a hint of a smile on his face. It's good. I started taking those art classes you suggested. They're pretty cool. That's wonderful, Tommy, Jonathan said, his voice warm with genuine interest. I'd love to see some of your work sometime. Tommy's face lit up, and for the next hour he chatted animatedly about his art projects, his plans for the future, and how the youth center had changed his life. As he was leaving, he paused at the door, turning back to Jonathan with a serious expression. You know, Mr. Blackwell, he said, his voice quiet but firm, what you and Mike are doing with that trust thing, it's gonna help a lot of kids like me. So, thanks. After Tommy left, Jonathan turned to Michael, who had been quietly observing from the corner. That boy, Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion, he's why we're doing this. He's why it all matters. Michael nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. As Jonathan's final days approached, there was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. The hospital room, once filled with the bustle of activity and the excitement of planning, grew quieter. Conversations became more reflective, more intimate. In one night, as a gentle rain pattered against the window, Jonathan beckoned Michael closer. Son, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, I need you to know something. Michael leaned in, his heart racing. What is it, Dad? Jonathan's eyes, though clouded with pain, were clear and focused. I am so proud of you, Michael. Not because of anything you've achieved or accomplished, but because of who you are. Your kindness, your compassion, your strength. You are everything I ever hoped you'd be and so much more. Tears streamed down Michael's face as he gripped his father's hand. Dad, Let me finish, Jonathan insisted gently. I know I wasn't the father you deserved when you were growing up. I missed so much, hurt you in ways I can never fully make right, but these past few months working with you, getting to know the man you've become, it's been the greatest gift of my life. Michael's voice broke as he replied, It's been a gift for me too, Dad. I'm glad we had this time. But I just wish. I know, son, Jonathan said softly. I wish we had more time too. But we've made the most of what we had, haven't we? Michael nodded, unable to speak through his tears. Jonathan's eyes began to drift closed, his breathing becoming more labored. Michael, he murmured, promise me something. Anything, Dad. Promise me you'll keep doing what you're doing. Keep helping those kids, keep making a difference. And promise me you'll be happy. Michael squeezed his father's hand. "I promise, Dad. I promise." With a peaceful smile, Jonathan closed his eyes. The room fell silent, save for the gentle beeping of monitors and the soft patter of rain against the window. In the early hours of the morning, as the first light of dawn began to break through the clouds, Jonathan Blackwell took his final breath. Michael sat by his side, holding his hand, tears streaming down his face. As the reality of his father's passing washed over him, Michael felt a complex mix of emotions: grief, love, regret, and a profound sense of gratitude for the time they had shared. In those final months, they had built a bond stronger than anything they had known before. They had created a legacy that would touch countless lives. In the quiet of the hospital room, as the world outside began to awaken to a new day, Michael made a silent vow. He would honor his father's memory not through mourning, but through action. He would continue their work, expand on their vision, and ensure that Jonathan Blackwell's true legacy, one of compassion, redemption, and hope, would live on. As he stood to leave the room, Michael paused at the door, looking back at his father's peaceful form. "Goodbye, Dad," he whispered, "and thank you for everything." With that, he stepped out into the hallway, ready to face the future, a future forever changed by the love of a father, the forgiveness of a son, and the power of second chances. As the first light of dawn broke through the hospital room window, Michael stood by his father's bedside, his heart heavy with grief yet filled with a profound sense of gratitude. He remembered his father's words from just days ago. "Life is precious, Michael. Every moment, every conversation, every chance to make things right, they're all gifts. Don't waste them like I did for so many years." Michael turned to you, the viewer, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. His voice, though choked with emotion, carried a strength and conviction that came from the depths of his soul. To anyone watching this, anyone who's struggling with unresolved pain or broken relationships, don't wait. Don't let pride or fear keep you from reaching out. My father and I lost years, decades even, to misunderstanding and hurt. But these last few months, they were a gift beyond measure. He paused, taking a shaky breath before continuing. "I know it's scary. I know it feels easier to hold on to anger, to nurse old wounds. But let me tell you something my father taught me in his final days. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting the past. It's about choosing to build a better future." Michael's gaze intensified, as if he was looking directly into your soul. And if there's someone in your life you've lost touch with, someone you've hurt, or who's hurt you, reach out. Make that call. Have that difficult conversation. Because one day, and it might be sooner than you think, it will be too late. His voice cracked as he continued, tears now flowing freely. "I almost missed the chance to know my father, to understand him, to forgive him and be forgiven. Don't make the same mistake. Life is too short, too precious to waste on bitterness and regret." Michael reached out, as if he could touch you through the screen. Right now, pause this video, pick up your phone, send that text, make that call. Tell someone you love them, that you're sorry, that you want to make things right. Because in the end, it's not the wealth we accumulate or the achievements we rack up that matter. It's the connections we make, the love we share, the lives we touch. He smiled through his tears, a smile filled with both sorrow and hope. "My father's last words to me were, 'I love you, son. Thank you for giving me a second chance.' Don't wait for a deathbed to say those words or hear them. Say them now. Live them now." Michael's final words were barely above a whisper, but they carried the weight of a universal truth. Love fiercely, forgive freely, live fully. Because in the end, that's all that truly matters. As the sun rose fully, casting a warm glow across the room, Michael turned back to his father's peaceful form. And in that moment, in the quiet of the morning, a son's love and a father's legacy became a powerful reminder of the healing power of forgiveness and the precious gift of second chances. As Michael stood by the window, watching the sunrise on a new day, he turned to face you, the viewer, with a gentle smile on his face. His voice, though tinged with emotion, carried a warmth that seemed to reach through the screen. You know, my father once told me, Michael, the greatest legacy we can leave is not in buildings or bank accounts, but in the lives we touch and the stories we share. And that's what we've done here today, shared a story. Our story. He paused, his eyes twinkling with a mixture of sadness and hope. But this story isn't just about us. It's about all of us, about second chances, forgiveness, and the power of love. I hope our journey has touched you in some way, maybe even inspired you to make a change in your own life. Michael's expression became more earnest as he continued. And if this story has meant something to you, if it stirred something in your heart, I'd love to know. Please leave a comment with the number 1 if you enjoyed our tale. Your support means the world to us, and it helps stories like ours reach more people who might need to hear them. He leaned in slightly, as if sharing a secret. And you know what? This doesn't have to be the end. There's so much more to share about the youth center, about the lives changed by my father's legacy. If you're interested in hearing more, in seeing where this journey takes us next, leave a comment with the number 2. Your interest fuels our passion to keep sharing these stories of hope and redemption. Michael's expression softened, becoming more reflective. Of course, we're all on different paths, and our story might not resonate with everyone in the same way. And if there are parts you disagree with or aspects you'd like to discuss further, please share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective is valuable, and it helps us grow and understand each other better. He smiled warmly, his father's words echoing in his voice. You remember what my dad always said, in the end, it's not about agreement, it's about understanding. So let's keep the conversation going, shall we? Finally, Michael's tone became gently persuasive. And if you found value in our story, if you want to support more content like this, please consider subscribing to our channel. As my father learned in his final days, it's the connections we make that truly matter. By subscribing, you're not just supporting our team, you're joining a community of people who believe in the power of second chances and the importance of sharing our stories. His eyes twinkled with a hint of his father's charisma. After all, as Dad would say, life's too short for missed opportunities. So why not take this small step with us? Subscribe, join our community, and let's continue this journey together. Who knows? The next story we share might be the one that changes everything, for you, for someone you love, or for someone you haven't even met yet. Michael gave a final warm smile. Thank you for being part of our story. We can't wait to be part of yours.